Yeah, guys. So, in light of what many journalists now have been actually arguing is the defeat of the DA, especially in the likes of Panyaza, actually arguing that Panyaza seems to have defeated the DA in the whole push for the Bella Act, which President Ramaphosa has actually passed. The DA chief with Michalakis is actually arguing that, the DA has actually also had some victories in the fight against Dr. John Hlophe from the NK, trying to get into the Judicial Service Commission, but also the fight against, the ANC. He actually argues that he doesn't see the ANC majority coming back, and we might actually see a much more GNU, government into the future, or the DA itself actually stepping up and actually being at the helm of things going forward. Let's quickly listen to DA Chief Whip Michalakis break down the victories the DA has had, especially in light of this whole Bella Act defeat, so to speak, in the words of journalists, and I'll be back for that
past year. But the Democratic Alliance in the National Assembly has had, as always, a busy year. Of course, the election marked a major shift in our parliamentary operations. We gained an additional 3 seats in the National Assembly, and we entered the government of national unity with 6 ministers and 6 deputy ministers, as you all know. We also gained 2 presiding officers, the House Chairperson Werner Horn and Deputy Speaker Annelie Lotriet, as well as 5 key portfolio committee chairpersons. Ultimately, this new era in Parliament should make us all excited. It is a new status quo that we will ultimately have to get used to, because the likelihood that we will ever, for the foreseeable future, not have a hung Parliament for many years to come is very small. The consequence of this is that we now have the opportunity to restore the dignity of Parliament through ensuring that there is a healthy culture of accountability and debate, that there is no guarantee for support for bad ideas that would affect the country negatively, and that we will have to continue to negotiate an acceptable midway that will improve the lives of everyone. The 7th Parliament started with the DA's fight to keep John Hlophe out of the JSC, a fight which started in Parliament by the DA, but which was ultimately won again by the DA in the Western Cape High Court. We also ensured that key issues are brought to Parliament. Some of them include the electricity price hike issue, the water crisis issue that's ongoing, and the SASSA hacking scandal. We were also at the forefront of fighting for the removal of former Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula at the beginning of the year, and former Justice Minister Thembi Simelane. Some expressed their concern that the DA, once it becomes part of national government, would cease to hold the executive to account, as we've seen for so many years under the ANC's majority rule. This has not been the case, and I'm proud to highlight today that, as you all know, the DA was at the forefront to call for a committee on the presidency to be established and for interpellations to be re-established as an oversight mechanism. The next question to ask is when this report will come to the House, so that it can be adopted, and so that the subcommittee can commence its work in figuring out the details on how these 2 mechanisms would find expression in Parliament. The DA also asked, and you will see it in the report, the most written questions to the ministers, 35.8% of all the questions, significantly more than the 20% of the seats that we hold. Through this mechanism, the DA has driven key issues on behalf of the public, which has also served as a valuable source of information to ensure a transparent and accountable government. Apart from holding the executive to account, our other constitutional obligation is legislation. In this regard, the DA has continued to introduce private members' legislations more than any other party in Parliament. The mechanism allows us as a party to put legislative proposals on the table based on our vision for South Africa, free from decisions in the executive, and it will ensure a better country for all. Some of these private members' bills include the legislation to stabilise coalitions, the Health Professions Bill, anti-corruption legislation, also known as the Scorpions 2.0 of Glenis Breitenbach, the Cyber Commissioner Bill, also from Glenis Breitenbach, land invasion legislation, and the Remote Gambling Bill. In the committees chaired by us, we've also ensured that some of the most important issues facing our nation were brought under the spotlight. Ian Cameron, for example, led the Police Portfolio Committee to ensure that the first extortion report is tabled almost 1 month before the deadline initially set by the EFF for an ad hoc committee to do this. You will remember that the DA fought for this issue to be dealt with by the Portfolio Committee and not an ad hoc committee. Bridget Masango ensured that the SASSA payment scandal is investigated by the committee she chairs in the Social Development Portfolio, and Leon Basson ensured that the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation investigate the circumstances around the ongoing water crisis, particularly in Gauteng, but a lot of the work still needs to be done in cooperation with COCTA in this regard. The DA is also represented, on every single portfolio and standing committee, and the details of the issues that were driven on many of these committees can be found in the report. What is important is that the DA has constantly continued to be at the forefront of putting issues that matter on the agenda of these committees. Of course, the one big difficulty that lies ahead is to see how we will negotiate legacy legislation from the Sixth Parliament introduced by the ANC in such a way that we can support such legislation. In a coalition, the general rule is that parties support the budget to enable their government to continue. We did so with the legacy budget tabled in February for this purpose, and only this purpose. With the midterm budget, we were more comfortable to support it, since many of the fiscal policies contained are suggestions raised by the DA, such as fiscal discipline, no rising taxes, no bailouts for SOEs, and the removal of VAT on certain food items. However, it must always be kept in mind that a coalition is in principle a constant compromise between the parties that make up this partnership. And as much as we manage to get some of our policies included in what ultimately gets tabled, so our GNU partners will also have to win and lose some of what they propose. All in all, nobody ever gets everything they wanted in a coalition, but everyone must get something of what they propose will make the lives of our citizens better. And in that instance, I submit to you all that we are in a much better position now to make a difference to our country than we were a few months ago. This does not extend, however, to the legacy legislation from the Sixth Parliament introduced by the ANC then, and the DA will not hesitate to oppose some of these bills that are not in the interest of the citizens of South Africa. The DA therefore stands where we always have stood, on the side of the Constitution that requires us to use Parliament to advance accountability and democracy, to raise the issues that affect the public, to expose corruption, to bring innovative legislation and scrutinize the legislation proposed by the executive, and to debate all of this in a constructive way. Our aim is to safeguard individual rights and to build a more open, liberal society for everyone to thrive in. Finally, I would like to, as the Chief Whip, express my gratitude to the parliamentary staff, particularly our operational staff, our researchers, the policy unit and the communications department, for ensuring that all our work in Parliament is done in a professional and meaningful way. They keep the engine rooms going, and they enable us as the MPs to represent the voters to the best of our abilities. Thank you.